Hello, in this mini lecture I'd like to explore one aspect of the Renaissance that moved beyond just an expansion of intellectual ideas to a geographic expansion, because the 15th and 16th century marked a kind of explosion of awareness of the world beyond Europe and a new curiosity and hunger to explore the boundaries of the world beyond Europe. The larger context for these voyages of European expansion were a number of crucial transformations happening in European society. We've already looked at the crises of the 14th century, the famine, plague, the war, the religious crises, that in some ways called into question old patterns of thought and created a certain space that allowed the new ideas of the Renaissance to be expressed. The voyages of European expansion reflect a geographical expansion of thought and perspective in Europe in the 15th century that really changed the future of the world. And looking ahead, we'll look at two other transformations, one religious with the Protestant Reformation, and then the scientific revolution as well. The European expansion or voyages of expansion began at the end of the 15th century, especially with Portugal exploring around the coast of Africa, pushing further and further until by 1498, Bartholomew Diaz crossed the southern tip of Africa and ended up in Ceylon, an island off of India, brought back spices and opened up the trade routes to India. By 1492, as you probably know, Columbus, under the Spanish flag, set sail for, well, he thought China. He ended up in North America. And in the decades that followed, there were a number of other voyages that set out to explore the known world, including the famous voyage of Magellan, who in 1521 ended up circumnavigating the entire globe. I want to raise just a number of questions before we move into this too much further. We know, or if you know American history, that the encounter between Europe and the native peoples ended badly for the indigenous people through the outright violence, or more often through the diseases brought by European explorers. Several million native people ended up dying in North America. But I want to ask, or hold in the back of our mind, how might that encounter have been different? Can you imagine cross-cultural contact that does not lead to the imposition of the more powerful over the weaker? Questions to keep in mind. A few background comments. One, the idea that the globe was, or that the world was flat, and that Columbus showed his courage by sailing out across the flat world, is just plain wrong. Since at least the 3rd century BC, geographers have known that the world was round. In fact, in around 270 BC, a Greek geographer by the name of Eratosthenes successfully calculated the circumference of the Earth. So Europeans explorers knew that the world was round. But their map of that world, based on a text by Ptolemy from the 2nd century AD, a map that was repeated over and over again, had some crucial errors. In the first place, it assumed that Asia was part of Europe. The idea was that you could sail west from Europe to get to Asia, to get to China, but they didn't have any notion that there was another continent, that North and South America existed, and so they assumed that it would be a fairly short trip. The other maps that were available in the Middle Ages were called T&O maps. And these maps, as we'll see, were mostly theological maps. They described a world. The T in these T&O maps are the Mediterranean Sea and the Nile River. And then the rest of the known world scattered around, but the axis, of course, was always Jerusalem, the center of the world. This is a map that's not going to help you very much if you want to sail to new territory. But as we'll see, the hunger to explore the world was keen, despite the fact that the maps of the world were not yet written. We'll explore that in the next mini.